Welcome, people of YouTube. Welcome to Daily Conservative, where I look at conservative issues and I tend to use facts and data to combat leftist logic because, of course, it's just logic. It's not practical. They don't apply it. They just think, oh, we have ideas, so they must be accurate, which, of course, is false. So today we're going to be looking at something that really irritates me. It forces people to take the blame for somebody else's actions, and it takes away accountability from people. It makes them think that just because they belong to a specific group of people that they don't have to be held accountable for their own actions, which ultimately leads to crises within society. So today, thanks to a user that sent me a private message, we're going to be looking at systemic oppression and SJWs and the ideas that they tend to have, which are really impractical and really just they're almost like a cancer on society. So when we look at SJWs, we think of social justice warriors. We think of people that tend to classify people in different classes and tend to give them points for being in these classes, points that they can use to combat systemic oppression. However, the entire concept of systemic oppression gives the idea that there are laws and rules within society that systematically oppress certain groups of people. Now, people tend to use this when they compare the idea of Black Lives Matter and the police. They say that the police are a type of systemic oppression against black people. However, studies have shown that black people are just more likely to encounter police, which ultimately leads to them having issues with police. Now, this could be from the fact that even though black people only populate a minute part of the United States, they account for over 50% of all the crimes that happen in the United States. This could also be the fact that the most amount of people killed by their own race in the United States is black people. So what this means is over 90% of black people that are killed within the United States are done by other black people, whether this is in self-defense or when they're actually committing a crime. So it's not actually the police that are responsible for the killings of these people, but rather their own race, their own group of people. However, this does not excuse the fact that white people still commit the most amount of crimes within the United States. White people commit certain types of crimes more than others in the United States, and this is disproportionately because there are more white people than any other group of people within the United States. Now, going back to this idea of systemic oppression, the issue that a lot of leftists have is they simply shout systemic oppression without actually giving examples of what systemic oppression is. And their logic for this is that they can do so because they are a group of people that are systematically oppressed, or they represent a group of people that are systematically oppressed. This is why a lot of people who are SJWs tend to lean towards Black Lives Matter instead of the actual police, because even though there's data to suggest that police are not responsible for what happens with Black Lives Matter, they don't care. They think that Black Lives Matter represents a group of people that are systematically oppressed. However, when we think of Black Lives Matter, we think of a group of people that go out there and they tend to riot. They tend to destroy their own cities because they feel as though those cities have been systemically oppressing them. However, using this logic, we can see that there are a couple of flaws. First off, by destroying your own cities, how are you producing a better environment for your own people living? Secondly, the group of people that are supposedly systemically oppressing you are those people that are supposed to be representing you. So, in fact, the majority of these inner cities where these Black Lives Matter protests are held are represented by people who are Democrats. And these Democrats tend to be these SJWs that are trying to help these people. However, within that time period that these Democrats have controlled these cities, there has been a rise in violence. There have been a rise of people moving out of the inner cities because they're being systematically forced out of the inner cities by those same Democrats that are supposed to be representing them. This has nothing to do with systemic oppression. This has everything to do with leftists gaining money by moving people out of certain neighborhoods into other neighborhoods. This is the logic that Democrats use when they move these people from places like the inner cities of Chicago to the outskirts of Chicago, because they're trying to move these people out. And what people don't seem to understand is that when they elect more conservative leaders that actually bring back jobs to the United States and people that give people money, then the rise in crime tends to lower. there's a direct correlation between the type of people that are elected and the amount of crime that happens in an area. However, going back to this entire idea of systemic oppression, it is actually racist, as a lot of leftists like to say, to group people into certain classes and therefore give them points based on these classes. So when people say that white people cannot understand the issues of black people because they're white, that's racist. You're assuming that a group of people cannot understand something just because they're not another race. It's not intelligent to say that people cannot give a factual opinion on an issue simply based on their race. So by saying that white people can't give an idea of what the problems that black people are facing just because they're white is racist. By grouping certain groups of people into certain classes simply based on their race or simply based on their ethnicity or based on certain characteristics that they have, this is racist. This is sexist. This is actually oppressive to those people because it's telling them that they don't have to take accountability for their own actions. They don't have to worry about what they do because of a certain part of their body, certain ethnicity, certain race that they have. So, going back to the issue of SJWs, even though it may seem like a good idea to help people that seem like they're oppressed, it's better to tell them to take accountability for their own actions and to make decisions within the United States that can help them move up in the social class instead of being stuck at the bottom just because of their own actions. People have to take accountability for what they do instead of simply blaming it on their race or their ethnicity. There was a recent study done in New Jersey that SJWs did because they believed that black people were being systematically oppressed or because they were being pulled over more times than by the police. Now, this study found that black people tended to speed more than white people. So what this means is people who were, they had police officers stop on the freeways and they were checking who was speeding as they passed by. And it showed that even though black people are a minute part of the population in New Jersey, they were overrepresenting when it came to speeding. So of course they're going to be pulled over more, which accounts to the fact that black people have more interactions with police officers. So ultimately, this entire issue of systemic oppression, it's a fallacy because it assumes that people are being oppressed simply based on their race instead of actually taking accountability for their own actions. Once people start taking accountability, then they can help themselves move up in the social class instead of being systemically held down by the government or held down by a group of people. Instead, by taking responsibility of their own actions, they're able to make their lives better instead of blaming others for being in a different group of people than themselves. So that's our topic today, SJWs and systemic oppression. If you guys have any other topics or if you have any other questions, feel free to comment down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and let me know what you think. See you later.